We are starting a new unit today, and we're dealing with Pythagorean Theorem. So that's how we say that word Pythagorean. And it was from a group of men that were actually kind of hiding and trying to look at different things and find some cool mathematical pieces. And they called themselves the Pythagoreans. And they attributed everything that they found to the one person, Pythagoras. So he's credited for a lot of mathematical formulas, even though it was a group of people. So we're going to go through and fill in some notes, and then you should also be writing some vocabulary down into your vocabulary notebook, and we're going to go through those right away. In a right triangle, the two sides adjacent to the right angle are known as the legs, or A and B. So we're talking about this. When we say adjacent, they're making up that right angle. It doesn't matter which is A and which is B as long as you have one of each. The side opposite the right angle, so now we're talking this side here, is called the hypotenuse, or C. And so we want to make sure that we're always kind of realizing where that is. The hypotenuse is always the longest side of a right triangle. So that's a good way to check your answers too when you're doing your calculations. That one has to be the longest. Pythagorean theorem tells us how the three lengths of right triangles are related. So this only works in right triangles. In any right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And as we're working through some things today, you'll see exactly how that works. The first part, you're just labeling the sides. So for example, I could label A, B, C. I may have switched you may have put B here and A here, that's fine, but this one has to be C. So go ahead and label those other three. Now we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So I know that this is a right angle. It's not drawn in, so we're going to go by visual looks, at least on this sheet here, and I'm just going to mark all those in. Sometimes the pictures were not being cooperative, and I just got frustrated. So looking at this first one, this would be my A, this is my B, so 3 squared plus 4 squared, which would equal my C squared. So I know that I have 9 plus 16. And then when I add these together, I get 25 as C squared. I just want C. So to find C, that means I have to undo the squared. And to undo the squared, I'm going to take the square root. So 5 is equal to C. And just a quick visual check, I can see that 5 is longer than the two legs, so that tells me that I'm probably right. If it's not longer, then that might mean that somewhere you made a mistake. So you're going to try the other two. Check your answers on that answer key. On the ones down here, I'm given now a leg and a hypotenuse, so a little bit different look to this. And so if I look at my a squared plus b squared, actually I'm going to put this a little bit higher. If I look at a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I now have c, and I have either a or b. So if we say this is a, that means I'm looking for a b. So I want to figure out how do I find b, and I'm just going to solve this equation up above. And this is a literal equation because I'm just moving things around. So I'm going to do minus a squared and minus a squared. They're not like terms, so b squared equals c squared minus a squared. And if I want to get to just b, that means I would take the square root. So b is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared, because the square root and the squared will undo each other. So those are both gone, leaving me with just a b. So this is the formula that I'm going to use here. So I know a and I know c, so I'm going to do 13 squared minus 5 squared, knowing that my C is the longest length. It helps out a little bit because if C is the longest length, then that tells me that it has to go first. Also, underneath the square root, I can't have a negative, so that's where I'm going to have to do the biggest number first. So 169 minus 25. And I do want this step written out because I want to make sure that I see what you're doing. Square root 144 is 12. So B equals 12 inches. So again, you're trying the next two. Our next problems, these are just story problems, so we're going to try to figure out where do I have a right triangle. A rectangular pool at Andy's gym, so I'm going to draw it out, measures 25 meters by 50 meters. How many meters would Andy need to swim in order to swim diagonally across the pool? So every time I'm looking for that right triangle, and then I'm going to do 50 squared plus 25 squared, and that's going to equal this diagonal length. So then I will just figure out what those are. So 2,500 plus 625, and that's going to give me 3125. And then I'll take the square root to get 55.9 meters. Go ahead and try those other ones and see how it goes.